Good morning to everyone. I'm very thrilled to be here this morning and to talk about something that I'm actually very, very passionate about. When I applied from the public school system to the Institute of Child Study Laboratory School, you know, when you're in for one of those interviews, you prepare for it and you anticipate what some of the questions are. And I knew 11 years ago that there'd be a technology question. And I prepared a beautiful paragraph, memorized it, as one tends to do sometimes. And I sat there and I heard the questions, what are your thoughts about technology? And my research up to then had been that, technology hadn't been used effectively. I didn't see very good examples of that in my practice. And although I had prepared that beautiful paragraph, I ended up saying the truth. I felt that, we should be removing technology from elementary school. It was isolating students. It wasn't bringing children together. And somehow, after saying that, they hired me. And it shows us that the Institute of Child Studies is very interested in exploring what technology can do. Not simply about the bells and whistles, but we know now when we talk about 21st century skills that we want children to acquire, we know that technology can absolutely facilitate that in means that other forms of education cannot. And so I'm here to talk about Knowledge Forum. I'm also here to talk a little bit about our Smartboard technology. Please make sure that I do that because we're very interested at the lab school, again, to explore how learning can be augmented. The plan this morning is to tell you a little bit about what knowledge building is. What is that philosophy of education? The Knowledge Forum software that supports it and has been developed by Carl Bereiter and Marlene Scardamalia at OISE University of Toronto. And then give you examples, both from the laboratory school at the Institute of Child Study and also from the Toronto District School Board. And then talk a little bit about assessment that's built into that form of technology and a research project that we've been working on involving a special needs child. So to give you a context, the school I ended up working at for the last 11 years is a laboratory school. Now mind you, that doesn't mean we have children running through mazes. It's a school that explores what's possible in education. We are a teacher training site, a research site, and a nursery to grade 6 school in downtown Toronto. We have a three-part philosophy. We believe that in an inquiry model of education. We believe that children don't come as empty vessels that need to be filled, but rather have many incredible ideas and a wonderful sense of wonder, and that needs to be fostered through a pedagogy, an approach to teaching that allows students to posit their theories, ask their questions, and then research them and share them collaboratively. We also believe that a child needs to feel secure. We try to establish an environment where everyone can participate, where knowledge has been democratized and the process of learning has been democratized, and a child feels known. And so we don't want children to feel judged when they're offering a theory, because we understand that that's a half-baked notion, and we're going to build upon that. All ideas are improvable after all. And so that is fundamental. And lastly, we take a developmental approach. We know that children are on their own trajectory, and there are many aspects to the whole child. There's social, emotional development, academic development, gross motor skills, fine motor skills, and each child has different pathways and a timing for each part of that journey. We're a Dewey and Lab school, and John Dewey reminds us that the aim of education is the continued capacity for education. So we learn in order to continue to learn. That it needs to be enjoyable, and sometimes we forget that, and that it needs to be meaningful with engaging activities. He has this controversial quote that I like to add, that we don't necessarily educate directly, but rather we create an environment where children can learn. And we know that technology has huge impact in the way that environment is created. And he rejects this idea of creating passive learners. When I think about myself as a learner, I was a very good student in the sense that I was very good at figuring out what the teacher wanted me to learn and repeated that back in the form, whatever form of assessment was being offered. We don't want children to be passive learners. We want children to be creative. We think about Sir Ken Robinson, who talks about how schools kill creativity. And that really resonates with us as educators because that's the antithesis of what we want to accomplish. My experience as a teacher has shown me time and time again that we're constantly underestimating what children can do. And so we hope today to show you that we're constantly surprised and amazed by our children, and we try to create an environment that allows them to show us. The type of education I'm going to be talking to you about takes time. We're not interested in coverage, checking things off, or expectations. And luckily, the Ministry of Education has seen that as well, and now has revised the expectations to identify big ideas that we should be concentrating on. So this allows us to really savor the learning and think about what could make it even better for students. We were called a slow school by Alana Mitchell in an article in the Globe and Mail, and we weren't sure at first whether or not that was a compliment or an insult. When we discovered that it was connected to the slow food movement, and it was again about savoring the learning, taking the time, noticing what children are thinking, having the children have metacognition, thinking about their own thinking, we thought, well, okay, we're fine with somebody calling us that. And our goal is about deep understanding. Again, we want children to go deeply, and this ties in beautifully with that idea that we're underestimating what children can do. We shouldn't limit their learning based on a prescribed curriculum, but allow them to go as far as they possibly can, and to appreciate that there's more learning left. Not that I did rocks and minerals in grade 4, done that, but that there are people right now asking the same questions that you're asking in that grade 4 classroom, and that they have an opportunity to continue to learn as well. When we look at the traditional way that students learn, we have curriculum experts designing the curriculum. Teacher acquires that curriculum, creates some wonderful tasks and activities, and you see the students receiving those tasks, and parents find out about it. I'm going to give you an example that sort of changes this. It comes from a grade 1 classroom at the Institute of Child Study, and it was in the fall, and children came to class and asked Patty, so why are leaves changing colors around us? And Patty said, I don't know. Can you tell me why you think leaves change colors? And I'm going to ask you to try to place yourself into the body of a grade 1 child and offer me some of the ideas that you think the grade 1 students may have said on that fall morning. Exactly. God painted them, or they were painted at night. And in fact, there was a child who said, fairies paint them at night. And Patty would have said, that's a wonderful theory. Thank you so much. Does anyone else have a theory? What other theories do you think grade 1 children would have? They're hiding themselves from the snow. That's a wonderful theory. In fact, you're absolutely right. I mean, snow is coming soon, and we know that after the fall comes winter. Thank you. Patty would be recording that theory as well.
They're angry. They change to red.
Oh, that's right. And sometimes when we get angry, you can tell just from our facial expressions or the color of our face. And so that's a wonderful theory. Thank you very much. And you know, there was a child who said, you know, I think it has something to do with photosynthesis. And Patty would have said, yes, that's a very nice theory. Thank you very much. And then moved on to the next person. And children had many, many theories. And at no point did Patty say, yes, that's right. Now, what were you going to say? But rather, she collected them all. And as they revised their theories, then they were researching, and chlorophyll became a part of their new revised theories. And so students were trying to figure out, well, what is this substance chlorophyll? What does it do? Maybe it has something to do with the cold, or maybe it has something to do with I heard the days get shorter. And what do you think would be the next step for the teacher in this case? We have all these wonderful theories, and these are actually some of the theories the grade 1s came up with. And what would be the next step now? Is it enough to stay with these theories? What should we do? If you were the teacher in this class and all the children have presented some of these theories. Yes?
I guess I'd want to practically or concretely try to explore.
Exactly, yeah. Absolutely, you want to explore them, you want to test out the theories, and that's exactly what the children did. They designed experiments to see whether or not their theories were correct. And so if the chlorophyll has something to do with dark, a child may have said, Patty would have said, well, how can we test this out? And the children may have said, well, we can put it in the closet in the classroom. Great idea. Why don't you take care of that? I think it has something to do with the days getting colder. How can we test that out? We can put it in the fridge, in the staff room. Great idea. Go ahead. You take care of that. And so you see the children being really empowered. They're designing the experiments, and they are testing out these theories. This is a slide by Scardamalia, who talks about how traditionally we have some wonderful teachers who are designing tasks and activities. I went to hear Wiggins and McTighe speak, and they were talking about an example where I think it was McTighe who said his daughter had come back from studying Pioneers, a unit on Pioneers, and he asked the question, I'm so glad you had that unit. I wonder, would you have liked to have lived in that time? And his daughter said, oh, yes. And I think, that's a beautiful assessment question. And he said, tell me why. And he said, well, Daddy, come on. You get milk, and you put it in a container, and you shake it, and you pass it on, and you keep on shaking it, and you make butter. And you get little pieces of fabric, and everybody sews them together, and you put those together, and you make a beautiful quilt. And then you get a tin can, and you drill holes in it, and you put a candle in it, and you make a beautiful lantern. And so you can see an incredibly rich classroom with wonderful activities. But at no point were those activities connected to the big idea that in pioneer times you needed to be resourceful, that in pioneer times it was hard. You needed to really make the things you needed. You needed to be frugal. And so Marlene Scardamalia calls this the Ptolemaic view of the curriculum, where tasks and activities are at the center. And she challenges us to keep those tasks and activities, absolutely, in the classroom, but to put the ideas at the center of every classroom. And we'll talk, this is what knowledge building means. We don't abandon the tasks and activities, but they're linked to ideas. I remember when I started teaching at the lab school, I felt I was actually harming children when I was studying light with them. If not every single child in the classroom made that periscope. Because that's just the way I taught. Everybody had to have that experience. And then I started to realize, well, what about if 4 or 5 who are really interested in the way lenses reflect light do that experiment, and somebody else is working on the way, those would be mirrors, and somebody else would be working on lenses, and we would bring that knowledge together. Would that still be okay? And we talk about this as a Copernican view of the curriculum. So back to that grade 1 classroom. Children were creating notes, and we'll talk more about this a little bit later, where I think chlorophyll goes into the tree to keep warm for the winter. And that note would be one of many notes that the children had. All these incredible theories preserved for everyone to read at any time. And so here are some others. Because it's too cold, change colors because they fall down, and it goes out, it leaks off. And we're very interested in this idea of idea diversity, that children already at the ages of 6 are thinking appropriately that ideas can be different than other ideas, that my idea is different than your idea, and that that's a good thing, to think about as many ideas as possible. Some of those ideas are going to live on, most of them are going to change, and that's perfect, because we want the creativity of all those ideas. I love this quote. I used to have it in my classroom by Brunner, in that it's about that half-baked notion that's probably the most important part of the whole process. We call that in the scientific method the theory, the hypotenuse. I don't like to call it that. I simply say, what are you thinking? What's your theory? Because I want children to realize that you begin with a theory after you've stated a question, but after you research, you end up with another theory as well. And that leads children to understand that all theories are improvable. And so this is the view of all the notes that the children had in grade 1 about leaves. And they did those experiments that we talked about. They tested out their theories. And you can see these are authentic problems relating back to what Dewey said about what's important about learning. Real ideas are being explored. And then something really interesting happened. The unit ended. The children went as far as they possibly could as grade 1 students. And then in the spring, Patty thought it would be a good idea to go to one of those maple